Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Using Code Generator to Publish APIs in Visual LANSA. My name is Tony Graham and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for LANSA. I am joined today by LANSA's Product Manager, Edgar Wharton. Hello there, Edgar.
All right, thanks guys for joining us again. I'm very excited for this one, especially since last time when we talked, we didn't really get to go over being able to publish web services as much in detail as it seemed that many of you really wanted us to. So without further ado, so what we're going to do this time is we're going to focus on, one, why do we want to publish web services? What makes it very easy with Visual LANSA? What are some of the security precautions that we have? And also, what does the workflow look like? So, and then we're going to go into a demo. And essentially, one of the reasons that we typically go about publishing web services is that, it enables entities to communicate without tying up resources on the server end. And so I remember for me, especially, it makes it very easy for other companies to integrate with your systems and for you to integrate into their systems. So think about things such as being able to easily facilitate those flows of information such as leads and sales data or incoming gas mileage updates for expense reporting purposes and so forth. And so when we discuss all of that, we always discuss it in this idea of an API economy. And so what that is essentially a circular economy built around technology that runs in the background. So when you think about it, you're making a request, you're expecting a response, and once you receive that response, dependent upon the level of access that you have, you can use that information to further build out your own applications, integrations, and so forth. So, I used to work in the restaurant industry as a product manager for a little while for a point of sale system. And so when I think about APIs, I love to look at APIs from the perspective of ordering at a restaurant. And so when you think about it, like a baseline scenario is you want to order food from a restaurant. So what do you need to do that? How do you complete this task? And what is the path from the restaurant point A to you actually receiving your food, which is point B? So, the first thing you do, you're going to walk into the restaurant and now you have a direct communication to your waiter. You have this setup between you and your waiter. HTTP 200, everything status is okay. The waiter is communicating back to you. So what you're going to do is you're going to request the menu. And in API terms, that request is typically going to be a GET method or a GET verb. So you request your menu and you're scanning the menu and you decide that, okay, I want item 4, it's a fish sandwich. And I tell this to the waiter checks in his repository and responds with, hey, that's an excellent choice. And so now I am getting acknowledgement that, hey, we have this fish sandwich in stock. So we're now going to send that to the kitchen and we are going to start preparing that order for you. And so you can continue going down this type of, this line of thinking all the way to once the order is sent to the kitchen to begin preparation by the chef. And then there's another request response that happens when we get to a situation where the waiter needs to come pick up the food and then deliver that food back to you. And so from there, we interact essentially with various different APIs. And so when we think about APIs, we interact with them on a daily basis, both from a technological and programmatic perspective, but also just through our daily interactions. And so, one of my other favorite ones is, once we have eaten our food, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to request a check. And once you request a check, now it's time for you to tender your payment. And we have multiple payment APIs that we interact with on a daily basis, from the backend systems of MasterCard and Visa that interact with our banks or interact with the banks that are behind our credit cards and so forth. All of those are various APIs that communicate with one another, so that the information flows seamlessly through. And so for me, when I think about trying to push people into publishing their own APIs, figuring out what they want to expose to, either it be their end users as external customers or maybe a business partner or something of that nature, I always go back to using restaurants as the best example, because many of us, we love to order food online, and most of the time we'll do that through our phones. And so those of us that have access to things such as Grubhub or Uber Eats or Postmates and Toast to Go, we use APIs on an almost monthly, if not weekly basis. So you're going to be using that API to, well, first and foremost, you bring up the application. Let's say it's Grubhub. And so you're requesting a list of restaurants. You're also sending in your location data, and that is sending you back a list within your vicinity. And from there, you decide that you want to choose restaurant at ID 1. And then you bring up, you're requesting the menu items from that restaurant. Once you have added all of your items to the cart, the next thing you do is you're utilizing a payments API, such as with Stripe or Braintree or JunoPay. And so all of these things are very much possible, even like within LANSA. So I feel that sometimes it's not as publicized, but yeah, within LANSA, you can use a lot of what's within a PayPal API and provide that to your customers as a way to interact with your shop. So what we're gonna get into today, more of, is really just how the workflow is for publishing APIs through Visual LANSA. And for some of you that are joining us again and some of you that are new, recently with the release of version 15, we made quite a few updates to our publishing workflow for being able to publish web services. So the first thing that users will typically have to do, unless they decide to code that themselves, is they will go into it and they'll create a new server module. And we have a new option that will allow you to create a web API. From there, you are going to nominate tables, select your security requirements, and then you're actually going to create that API. And so next up, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into the background, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit of some new stuff that we have going on as well, which is very exciting. And Anthony will probably touch on that a little later. So of course, one of my favorite templates to always use is our dashboard template. Within this template this time, I decided that I wanted to pull in data from an ODBC connector. And that data that I was pulling in happens to be from an old Instagram photography account. And so I wanted to just pull in a few points of data that focus on just some comments and some replies. And apologies, my internet is being a little slow right now. But essentially, we pull this data in, we create a list, and it gives some comments and replies. And that is just, one particular portion of what you can receive from that data source. So we see that we've done this, and I wanted to do this just because I wanted a fresh different type of data. I wanted something that I was pulling from a different source into the repository. Now, from a Visual LANSA perspective, what we're going to do, so I'm going to take you guys over here. So, as I was explaining before, what most users are going to have to do is obviously they'll go to File, they'll go to New, Server Module, and we have this option to create a web API. When going to this option, we can say test replies IG. So this allows us to nominate the tables that we would like. We can have a primary table and or secondary table. So I'm going to go in and I am going to search for my replies table. Have that, and we're all good to go. So that table is actually coming from the CData, for Instagram for CData ODBC connector that I actually have working in the background within my LANSA system right now. Basically, those ODBC data connectors, they connect via an API to the source database. And through LANSA, what makes it very easy and wonderful is that once you add in the driver into your LANSA system, then you can import table definitions and you can pull that information over into your LANSA repository, and you'll be able to receive a view of what fields and tables that you're actually going to be bringing into the repository and so forth. So that really helps to take a step out of having to make multiple requests and consuming API web services from certain places. So in one of our most recent EPCs, we've added an additional option here to where you can select the security type that you would actually like for your API system. So you can, for most purposes, well, for my purposes for the demo today, I'm going to do none, but you can have basic authentication security type or have a bearer token. And another point to make about this is that if you do decide to do a basic, I'll go ahead and do it, a basic or do the bearer token, you can also generate security examples for this within the server module that'll be created. All right, and so we go through this very short process, and in no time, we have a summary of what exactly our new server module that will be the API that we're going to publish and expose can do. So as you can see, you have your source, API definition, repository details, cross-references. API definition tab is going to be one of the most important places for you to go and pay attention to. Because once you compile everything and you have your YAML file, your API definition, as well as the various paths and what each one of the paths is capable of pulling will be listed in that area. This is also the place where you can decide on the various security schemes that you have, how everything interacts. Yeah, there is a lot of work that can actually be done and pulled into this. Additionally, you are able to drag more paths onto this. So if there are other tables or fields that you would like exposed within this one particular API, you can drag those over and they will become a part of your API scheme. For our purposes, we'll stick with just the replies and the data that it is actually going to be able to provide to us. One of the wonderful things about this entire generation that we have here within the source code is that one, everything is of course flexible and manipulable, but it's also commented out so that you are provided with a learning opportunity for yourself, as well as a learning opportunity for others that may be new to developing within Visual LANSA and really just want to get a better understanding of how this would actually work for their system. Typically, what I love to tell people is when they are in the process of determining, what APIs they want to expose to their end users, and determining what level of access they actually want to provide people. It's always a really great idea to really just figure out exactly, one, do you want your end user to be able to make updates on their own? Do you only want them to have read-only access? If you are exposing an API to the public, perhaps just in this example that I'm showing you, what you're going to want to do is you'll have API that is for comments. Then you'll have an API that is for replies. Then you'll have an API that is for querying pictures or something of that nature. That way you are separating out those resources. You're keeping everything efficient, but it's also able to interact with one another. And so if someone else, myself, if I'm integrating with your system, then I'm going to take those various endpoints and potentially create something that I can use for myself. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about architecting how you want to publish your APIs. I would definitely suggest going on to medium.com and just reading over some of those articles and really getting a better understanding of being able to deploy microservices and being able to publish various APIs and how they can interact with not only your end users, but also within any of your internal systems and applications that you may have. So one of the things that we definitely have to talk about is that, we get you started really, really well here. Being able to have all of this information exposed this quickly and this easily allows you to easily replicate what you're going to see here. And so I'm actually going to make this a little smaller just so I can bring up the slideshow one more time. So, because I want to talk about what's actually happening in the background. So first things first, we'll look at the get method. So I'm hoping that you all are able to see my screen very well. The first things first is that for each of the methods that are exposed, you will receive an API summary. That API summary is commented out and it provides what the path is, the operation that will be handled, as well as what the request and response is going to be. And as we go from there, we start to see what is exactly happening in the background of our solution. So when we're generating a web API, what's happening is that you will have several server routines that are going to be generated. So let's say that what I want to do is I want to get the replies from Instagram. The first thing that's going to happen is a server routine is going to be created to get the replies. This is going to then be bound to the HTTP context. And so the purpose of doing that is so that when we're going through and looking at the request headers and so forth, and people are requesting that information from us, we are able to ensure that they are actually receiving the right and correct response, and that they are receiving a response. So as we continue going down, we have within the server routine, the binding. From there, we're going to fetch all of the fields that are necessary for this particular operation to happen. So for get replies, we need the replies, we need the text, and we also need the ID of that reply. And all of that will get housed within an object. So as we look at the fetch fields, that is going to get us the replies, and it's going to do it by key, which is the replies ID. Once we have those in tow, then we're going to map those fields to the replies object. And that replies object is what will be pushed out to the end user. And that is what will be shown to the end user as an JSON object. And that's the content that they will be able to read on their side. Now, you may be wondering also, how does your end user actually receive this information? So when we go through this process of creating a web API and publishing that, the API definition, you're also able to publish the specs of the API as well. And those are published under the OpenV3 API specs. So that follows what has been utilized across the board. And you can see some examples of that if you have any access to people that may have Swagger documentation, which is another way that you're able to publish any of your API documentation through Visual LANSA as well. All of that can actually be settled upon right on the API definitions tab. So when you do that, it actually takes all of the information that you see within this tab and it combines it within the YAML file. And from there, you're able to publish this as part of your entire application package. So it's actually very, very simple what is happening within the background. Unfortunately, I was working last night to try and set my system up so I could run a few API calls back, but I wasn't able to do that successfully as of yet. Not on my local host. I was having some local server issues, but essentially you're able to query these APIs with no difficulty whatsoever. And I think that through the use of our C data connectors and that partnership that we've leveraged with them, that is going to make it much easier for you to consume certain information that you may have, such as Salesforce access, such as whether it's things from Google Drive or Box, or perhaps you have a Power BI database that you want to receive information from. So I think that being able to make those connections and bring that information into the repository definitely adds even more value to what we're able to do within our code generator for publishing web APIs. And so one of the next things is that, like I said, we just really help you guys to get started on being able to do this and handle it on your own. So it's really great because you're able to take these and replicate them across the board. It's very simple. It's a set of server routines. It's a set of objects. And the ultimate goal here is to ensure that whenever someone makes a request to these endpoints and to these resources, that we serve up the proper information. And that is really the bulk of how the API code generator works. I think that as time goes on, there are going to be some more enhancements towards that. Right now, we are looking at a few more security enhancements that we have been working on through a new offering that we have called Portalize, which Tony is going to touch on momentarily. But I think that being able to quickly spin up an API and just see how it works and see how your users interact with it will provide a lot of value, and it will provide a lot of feedback towards, you know, exactly what type of data and information are your end users actually looking for. Why are they requesting this information? Additionally, through Visual LANSA, there is loads of things that you are able to do that are outside of just being able to go through this process of generating this boilerplate code. You are also able to put together your own API gateways to turn on and off logging and tracing. You're also able to put together a means of detecting inauthentic web traffic so that you can actually block those IP addresses that are trying to force their way into your system. And so some of those things are actually we're going to be bringing out soon within a technical reference guide, so that we can provide this type of information, kind of tips and tricks to our end users, so that they can take what is very simple for a workflow and actually build off of that. But before I end this part, I definitely want to really just show you guys a little bit of like how the CData connectors work. Because if you already have a LANSA system, I think that it will just be a nice fun thing to try out. So we do have a brand new page with CData, nice little marketing page. So you're able to see what connectors we have available. And so CData offers these connectors on a 30-day trial. And so basically what you're going to do is you would go to one of these connectors. I'm going to find something that I know I have right now that I can use. So I'll just go back to this one just for demonstration purposes. And then you just fill out your information, and then you will receive a download to download that particular driver. And then, but most importantly, you would just look at the documentation to know exactly what you need to do first. So there are a few additional steps for LANSA, and I will kind of show you guys those right now, since we have a little bit extra time. So if I am wanting to utilize one of the CData drivers after downloading it, I need to open up my XDB environment file. In this file, we don't want you to obviously like manipulate this file much, because this can change a lot within your actual database. However, in order to install these drivers on your system at this current moment, you would actually go down to, it depends on if you have SQL Anywhere or SQL Server or Azure. I'm using SQL Server. So I'm going to go down to my Microsoft SQL Server. after I've downloaded the database connector, and I have installed it into my ODBC configuration, I'm basically going to come here and I'm going to add in the CData ODBC driver for Salesforce or for Instagram or for whatever service that is going to be provided that we can use. So these can be things such as Google Analytics or HubSpot or Google Drive. This also works for Microsoft Access and Excel. So after I've done that, one of the things that, we're going to just save this. It'll update within the system automatically after we restart the IDE. But one of the things that we definitely have to do prior to actually being able to bring in any information is we're going to have to go to our ODBC data source administrator. And so in this area, we will go to the system DSN, and that's where we will find the driver that has been installed. From here, we are going to configure it, and some of the drivers allow for an OAuth. So once you go to configure, you can click test connection, and that connection will link out to perhaps a social media page or an email page such as Gmail, and you can log in using those credentials. And then once you do that, everything else will be set up for you. So that's very seamless, and there's quite a few that actually allow for that type of authentication. And the rest basically is going to take in the username and password, and then it's also necessary to make sure that you don't have any firewalls up, just to make sure that the data is going to flow seamlessly. So one of the things I like here is that you get a wonderful table view. So I'm able to see what tables are available to me, and what fields I can actually interact with when I pull them into my LANSA system. So right now I've only been interacting with comments and replies, but that just gives me a general idea of the data that I'll have and what I can actually pull into the system. If you are using Salesforce, the information is going to primarily be coming from the bulk API. And so it facilitates the ease of that significantly. So if I go to my Salesforce for CData driver, and I go to configure, I'm just gonna give you an idea of the tables. So this is pulling from a test bulk API for Salesforce. So there's a ton. There's a ton of actual tables that you can have access to. And so it's pulling this information just from the Salesforce bulk API. Depending on who you are, it can be very time consuming to figure out exactly what you need to look through their documentation and so forth to get this information. And so actually using these CData drivers speeds up that process significantly, especially when you're using these drivers in conjunction with Visual LANSA. So if I am going back to my IDE, and I go to Tools and Import Table Definitions, as you can see, after adding in the drivers into my database file, I'm able to select any of these databases that I have. So I'm going to select my Salesforce CData driver. And so now I'm able to see in a clear view exactly all of the tables that are available to me, that are going to be fed from the bulk API through the ODBC driver. So, and if I want to bring any of these in, then I can, of course, select all of them, but I will just select a few login event, login history. And then I have the option of saying that, hey, this is only going to be for read-only access. This will have commitment control. It can submit compiles. I'm just going to do read-only access. And then what will happen is that you will get what can be generated. You will also receive any warnings, especially if there might be some issues with data that's being brought over. Additionally, if there are matches within the same name of an existing repository, so you will receive certain warnings of that nature. One of the things that you are able to do, you can still complete this transfer and import of the table definitions, and then once you actually open up any of these table views, you can further examine what needs to be changed to bring them over. Sometimes it's a matter of creating a virtual column. Sometimes it's a matter of looking at the actual data type that I was trying to bring through. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this up. And so, yeah, it just makes it much easier for us to bring in the data that we need and that we're used to having. So, you know, for the person that has everything within their Salesforce database, being able to quickly and easily connect it to your Visual LANSA system to potentially create internal applications for your end users. Perhaps, you know, you don't necessarily want to use the Lightning app functionality. You would rather just be able to bring in your sales team leads, their notes, any of their attachments or any of that information into a LANSA built application and deploy it to them and allow them to access it through that mobile interface. So there's definitely a lot of upside to this, and I think that it would be very great for people to just, you know, check it out, see what they think, and really play around with it. So I am going to go and look at one of these tables. So I have list email, and again, it brought it in seamlessly. It load, I have all the columns that I need. I can go to my data preview, I'm gonna do a refresh. And there was nothing in that data, in that particular table. Sorry guys. But again, this is basically one of the things that we are really excited about and that we think that a lot of our end users are going to enjoy. And we're going to keep working on building up those different partnerships and connections to bring in more third-party integrations. But yeah, I think that about does it for me on my side. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email. But yeah, Tony, you want to take it away?
All right, thank you very much, Edgar. That was really cool. Appreciate all that. We do have a couple questions, if you wouldn't mind fielding some. So the first one we have is, do we always have to specify a primary table? He says, in my case, I would probably be returning selected data based on logic from multiple tables.
Hold on. I need to read it because my speakers are doing something really bizarre. Hold on. 1 second. There we go. Okay. Do we always have to specify a primary table? In my case, I would probably be returning selected data based on logic from multiple tables. So, for the most part, you do. But you know what? Let's give it a go. And can everyone hear me, Tony?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I had to switch up my speakers for a second. Okay. Now, the thing is that, yeah, so you're going to have to provide a primary table. Either it's going to be something existing or not. But an option that you do have is you can, let's say, spin up one of the server module instances, get a feel for exactly what's happening within the code. And then from there, you can really start to create those server routines on your own and build out some of that logic that would work for multiple tables. And even within the generated code, like I said, you have the ability and the flexibility to maneuver throughout that as you please. So, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error, but if you're using the code generator, it is going to ask you to specify a primary table to pull in that information. However, if you go in, do the primary table, then, can you not hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, okay, sorry, I just thought it'd pop up. But yeah, so yeah, you can totally just go in and begin to specify those routines yourself. And is CData ODBC driver available for IBM I, or is it a Windows only? So we're actually working on that right now. At the current moment, that is inconclusive. We're still testing that particular point out for IBM I. I can tell you that we know for a fact that it works seamlessly with Windows. However, we want to make sure that nothing is going to go missing and that we do have a solid connection when we are going to use this for IBM I. If possible, it would be great for you to either email, your account representative, or email someone in marketing or sales, just letting them know that you asked this question, just so I can be able to follow it up with some additional information, because that's something that we're working on this week and next week.
All right, good. And then how can we get a copy of this video? I do believe this video will be available shortly after we end here. We'll get it up for everyone to be able to see. So you'll be able to access this video once we are done. Another follow-up question I had kind of offline, and I think you touched on it, but maybe just summarize it again. What's the difference between using just the native API and using a CData? Which one do you use, and when, and why?
Okay. So it really depends on the type of services that you're trying to ingest. So for CData, basically you're connecting with data sources. And so a lot that you have are like Instagram and the Facebook one, that, those are fairly minor to some regard. But what you mostly have with CData is going to be things such as Salesforce, SAP, SendGrid. You have payment APIs that you're able to basically pull in any of the data that you have within those systems. So I would say that when it comes to choosing between CData and an API, CData is much more useful when we are trying to bring in large amounts of information from a place like Salesforce or a place like Power BI, or if we're using Google BigQuery, or if we're or even Microsoft Access for some people. That's where CData comes in very handy. But if we are trying to put together, let's say, an API connection that is going to, so let's say SendGrid, which allows you to monitor and do analytics on your emails, also allows you to receive and send emails. So let's say we want to do that. That's going to be much more of an API thing, in which their API documentation provides you, the end user, the ability to maneuver around exactly what you need to call in terms of their services, how you're actually going to send an email out, how it's going to be received, any of the templating that's possible with SendGrid, and any of the security protocols that they may have in place, as well as the API token and access pairs that you're going to need. On the CData side, you would use the CData SendGrid ODBC driver to actually potentially just easily query any of that information that you have. So any of the metadata that you have from SendGrid, you can use that driver to easily query that, which keeps those two operations very separate. So it really depends on exactly what you're trying to do. My goal is always to figure out what's going to be the most efficient for me. But I would say that CData, definitely easy to just bring data into the repository, begin to manipulate it, and begin to build applications from databases that you already have data within. So if I love going back to the Salesforce because it's fairly ubiquitous, or even Zendesk if you have a customer service or contact center. Zendesk, it provides its own database type of system where you can query and so forth. But you can also use ODBC driver to bring in information about your comments, your the tickets, your CSAT scores, your net promoter score, and things of that nature. And you can actually bring that into your LANSA system, and you can begin to manipulate that data to show dashboards across your organization to keep everyone on track with one another, or perhaps to even create personalized dashboards for people with managers or contact center specialists and things of that nature. So it would be much easier to do that, taking in the data from the CData driver, than potentially having to just do that with just the API, because there would just be it would be a little bit more tedious, I would say. But yeah, that would be probably the biggest differences and the main reasons to choose one over the other. But it really depends on the actual purpose that you're going for.
Great, thank you. That was a great explanation. So we have a few minutes left here. I'm gonna, if you could show your screen again, we can go over just 2 slides I really want to touch upon.
Yeah, no problem. Let me get that back up going. And there we go. Tony?
Yes.
Can you see it?
I do not see it.
No? 1 second. I see what happened. There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so LANSA recently announced Portalize, and so if you haven't seen it yet, we want to show it to you again here. So Portalize is a fast, secure, fully functional enterprise portal, and it's powered by Visual LANSA. So this portal that we've created is low code. It's totally powered by Visual LANSA. And so, when you get Portalize, you're actually getting the full source code. So it's your portal, right? It's your code. We're just giving you the best, the most requested features that somebody would want in a portal and packaging it up for you. So you're going to get the source code. You're going to get Visual LANSA modules that you can use even in other applications. It's yours, and you're going to see like best practices as well in Visual LANSA, how LANSA structures their applications and flows, and you're going to get all this navigation, and so it's completely customizable. And then, but we just don't stop there. So you're going to get fully function admin features such as assigning roles, email notifications. You're going to be able to customize those templates for your email notifications. You're going to be able to create security questions, lock out accounts, unlock accounts. You're going to have session logging. You're going to be able to turn Google Analytics off and on if that's important to you. If you're figuring out where people are coming from and driving people to your site. And then we've also packed it full of user features as well. So, users can create account automatically if you want them to. They can set their security questions. They can fill out their profile data, name, employer. And so we give all that to you and in a secure package, and everything we've learned from security, we've applied into Portalize. So this is a very secure product. And so we show, what I'm showing you here is you can see like this, what it looks like, the settings panel and the administration panel, but then you can plug. So we give you the code start for this portal with all these features, and you plug in your application. And so you don't spend the time developing everything that we've developed for these over the years of all these portals. It's right here in best practice. You plug in your application, or you develop your application, and you're up and running in much faster time. And like I said, it's completely customizable. It's totally yours, but you're still going to get full features with it. And so, if you want to inquire about that, this is something we've just released. And so we're pretty excited to announce this. And then next, I think it's 2 slides. We won't go into see data again because we've hit that pretty good today. Edgar's covered a lot. But the last one more I want to cover is, and we've said it before, is Learn LANSA. But what's exciting, I think, is at the end of this week or beginning of next week, we have 2 API courses that are going to go on there, one for 14.2 and one for 15. And so, you can kind of see what we've learned here, and then you're going to be able to go through some courses in further, in a little more depth. And then we're also creating an advanced API course. And so, with all these APIs, with it's big as they are, connecting to other data sources, we're going to give you the means to kind of go through these courses and be able to learn that yourself. So you're going to have this video, you're going to have courses, and so we're continuously updating. We're also have a new advanced tutorial that we're about ready to put on there. Hopefully same thing, end of this week, beginning of next week, and that's all free. And so we encourage you to sign up for Learn LANSA. You can either email or send a message to your sales. There's links on there that you follow the link, and it'll email me, and we'll get you enrolled. So API courses are coming, advanced tutorial is coming, and so still we have the community. You guys can talk to each other, and so we're excited that we're offering even more completely free for Learn LANSA. So I wanted to touch upon that, especially since we just went through APIs. We're going to be putting API courses on there. So hopefully you guys are excited about that. And so I think that's it. We've sort of come to the end.
Yeah, I think we have like maybe 2 questions. Let's see. Are we able to do something similar to API generation if we are not on V15? So hold on, I'm actually going to send you a link. So you are able to do something similar. You can still publish your own web services, but a lot of that is going to be very much relegated to you coding that yourself for the most part. We do have some tutorials that were built specifically for that, and I can send those along to you. Those are actually really great tutorials, and they give a very good overview of being able to put together, like implement the various API methods that you want your end users to actually be able to utilize. So give me 1 second. And I think that may be one particular course that we may at some point try and pull over. Only because that was a pretty good one. It goes very in depth. So I'll send you that in a second. And Tony, is Portalize a separate add-on or included with Visual LANSA?
So Portalize is separate. Go ahead and inquire about it through sales, or if you're a current LANSA customer, contact your salesman. If that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to contact sales. It is separate, but it's very advanced, and you're going to save months of development of creating a portal. So it's a great code start. I say code start because it's the start of your, it's the you don't have to create a portal for your application. It's already, the portal's created, you plug your application in, and then you can modify it as needed. I don't want to downplay it as a CodeStart because it's an amazing product because the portal is done for you. But it is, you just plug yours in. So it is a separate product sort of from Visual LANSA. It's created with Visual LANSA. So if you have Visual LANSA, it's going to be even better. If you're looking at Visual LANSA and you need a portal, then it's like a perfect package. So I encourage you to inquire sales about that.
Yeah, I definitely think that Portalize is one of the best things that will allow you all to really see what can be accomplished within Visual LANSA. So Portalize is all built within Visual LANSA, and so outside of some of the things that Tony had mentioned that you actually receive with Portalize. You're able to essentially, you're able to transfer your settings between portals and portal roles. So let's say if you have like a dev role, a test role, and a production role, you're able to transfer those settings seamlessly between the two. And then having the modules for like your Google Analytics configuration already built in, that just gives you more power and ability to say, okay, so I have this module, well, let me replicate that module and build in other modules that I actually may need. So one thing about Portalize is that it is very modular in itself. So a lot of that is something that you will be able to take with you and apply to any of your future applications.
Yes, great point. And it's because it's built with Visual LANSA, it's responsive. So sort of out of the box, it's good for mobile phones, tablets, desktop. And so it really harnesses the power of Visual LANSA into an amazing product. So, okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today and staying with us. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope you found it very educational. Again, if there's any questions you think of after this, just email us, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. So thank you very much. Thank you, Edgar, for another great presentation. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you everybody for stopping by. Thank you.